Welcome to Planet of the Associations. I'm Seth Kahn.
And I'm Mark Levy.
And Mark, what are we doing here? What's this about?
Yeah, so Planet of the Associations, it's a vlog and podcast. And what it is, it's for C-level people in associations, right? CEOs and other C-level people in associations. And it's specifically, we're going to be talking about the association of the future. Right. And when I say the association of the future, I don't mean like the far future where you can't check if we're right or not. Right. If it's 100 years from right now, we could say, yeah, your association is alien life forms or what, like you couldn't check on us. But we're talking about the association of the near future. It's what is that going to be and how do you create it? The association of, let's say, 3 years from now. So right now we're filming this in 2021. So it would be the association of 2024. But whenever you're listening this, it's always X plus 3. Right? Whenever you're listening to it, add 3 years. That's what it is that we're talking about. So we're going to be talking about what makes the association of the future. How do you get there? And we're going to be talking about things like increasing your membership and making an impact in society and all those cool things that you expect. But the unexpected is this, that Seth and I very much believe in a certain creative aesthetic, and that is that linear logical thinking can only get you so far. That if you have a problem, a business problem, a personal problem, whatever it is, that there's A, B, C, D, E steps that you can take. And you can take them and solve your problem. And if you do, that's great. But there's so many problems that we take those linear logical steps over and over and over and over again, and we just never get a solution. And that's because we're stuck in this flywheel of a certain logic of thinking that we keep on smashing up against the wall over and over again, and the wall's not moving. So it is essential to use the tool or the strategy of indirection in order to come up with something much bigger, much grander for your association and the world. So if you want to make big things happen for yourself and your association and your membership and the world, you need to think not just like a percentage point or two to the right or left of what you normally do. You need to think in a wide variety of ways that deviate far off the track. And then you learn things out there in the periphery, and then you bring those back and you see if it works in your problem. So Seth and I, yes, we're going to be talking about associations, about biz dev and all those kinds of things you'd expect us to talk about. But we're also going to be talking about advanced mathematics. We're going to be talking about science. We're going to be talking about folk art. We're going to be talking about magic. We're going to be talking about origami. We're going to be talking about sociology. We're going to be talking about history. All kinds of things that may seem beside the point, but then we will attempt to bring them back to what it is that you need to hear about your association. Did I get that right, Seth? Are we doing that, or am I totally off?
No, that's right. That's exactly what we're going to do. And that last part about bringing it back, well, that's our magic trick. That's where we're going to take all of these strange, seemingly unrelated topics and hit them home so that they actually make a difference on the ground. But before we do that, we have to move out into space. And as I'm looking at your space, Mark, I see all these rectangles. I see a rectangle on each side of your head. I see a rectangle down by your shoulder. I see a rectangle on your windowsill. I see, what's with the rectangles?
Yeah. So I'll tell you the rectangle story, right? So the rectangle story, to prepare for this vlog, I was talking to a client of mine, Denise, who I adore. And I was telling her, oh yeah, the interesting thing is, like, we're going to talk about who Seth and I are in a second, but I'm a differentiation expert, a differentiation consultant, right? I find the differentiation for businesses and brands and thought leaders and whatnot. I make sure that they stand out around what I call a big, sexy idea, right? This unique idea. So I said to Denise, I said, it is essential that our backgrounds in this Zoom age that we're in, this video age, that my background convey the idea of what I'm about. Like, how do I approach things? And so I have this background as a magician. I have this background as a comedy writer. I have all kinds of things in addition to doing my business stuff. And so I said, I want to have a poster of Steve Cohen, the Millionaire's Magician, because I helped create Steve's brand, and I co-created the show that he runs in New York City. It's actually the #1 rated show on TripAdvisor. It's run for 20 years. Clients like anyone you could imagine, the royal family.
Warren Buffett, Stephen Sondheim.
Warren Buffett, right. Stephen Sondheim, all these people, right. Lots of clients. So I co-created all that. And I co-created them. They wouldn't have existed. Yeah. No. So
but he really did co-create the show, and it really is literally more popular than Hamilton on TripAdvisor. I mean, when the pandemic subsides, you must go see Chamber Magic.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. And it is those things, right? It is the number. It is above Hamilton and all those things. So I said to her, I want to put up a poster of Steve Cohen, the Millionaire's Magician, the performer, in my background, right? Because that's emblematic of who I am. MST3K, all these things are emblematic of kind of who I see myself to be and how I create stuff. And she said, oh yeah. She said, you're this out of the box thinker. You need to frame the posters that you put up in unusual ways. I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, maybe put like a sawtooth on one side of the frame, not on the poster. Don't alter the poster. It's the frame. Or maybe have part of the frame bevel out like in some strange way or whatnot. And I thought that was an interesting idea. But what it really got me thinking about was the idea of, okay, unusual frame for the poster. Why are poster frames almost always, not always, but almost always rectangles? Like, why is that? All posters are rectangles practically, broadsides, the things they used to put up on the sides of barns, circus. Right. They'd have the glue and they put it up. But not only that, it got me thinking, the laptop I'm looking at you guys with, that's one rectangle with another rectangle with a rectangle here. I have rectangular lights. I have a rectangular microphone. I'm looking, at rectangular walls in a rectangular house. These documents are rectangular. My books are rectangular. It's like, what is it with the rectangles? Why is everything like our rectangles? Are they, is it necessary that things be of rectangular shape, or did someone centuries ago just maybe use a rectangle as a workaround, and like maybe the other people said, oh yeah, that's what we should do, like let's use it. Whereas like maybe some guy used a rectangle because they were lazy, and now like our society is built on rectangles. And it made me think, I'll let you talk in a second, Seth. It made me think, years ago, I had read something about in other societies, like in, in native societies up north or so, that the rectangle is not necessarily as prevalent there, that there's rounded, buildings that are more rounded and whatnot. And you have Buckminster Fuller with the geodesic dome and whatnot. So anyway, and it's important, and then you can talk. It's important that to me that we think about like why is society built on rectangles? Because it seems like maybe in associations there are rectangles there too. As a matter of fact, maybe rectangles predominate. Maybe there are assumptions about associations about what they should be doing and who their people should be and what they should be doing in the world that are like just based on workarounds from years ago from unnamed sources, from people who aren't as smart as you are. And like maybe we're just blindly following those things. Like, what's up with those rectangles? Seth, take it away.
I love how you said, I'm going to tell you about myself in just a second. And then you literally did in 1 second. 1 second later, we learned about you as a differentiation expert.
Right. Exactly.
You've already delivered.
I compress time.
That's right. Now we just need to
time traveler.
We need to deliver on our promise to pull all this together. And I'm gonna attempt to start that right now, but it's a little early in the show, so we've still got farther to go.
Right.
You know, when associations think about how they're structured, they tend to use the same org charts that corporations do, which, by the way, have a lot of right angles in them. Some of the most progressive association leaders I know are using circular org charts to create different kinds of relationships. Recently, I talked to 2 association leaders who both told me that they're changing this fundamental paradigm of associations from membership to leadership. Think about what it would be like if everybody who was in your profession or your trade was a leader, was active in the world, was creating influence, not just subscribing, not just taking in information, not just showing up, but we're actually out there pushing, making a difference, advocating, and changing the world so that it would deliver on your mission. Those are 2 different ways that you can start to shake things up. And we are here to shake your world. That's what this is all about. So I want to just head a little bit farther in that direction. And you have a great story, Mark, about Ari de Roos. Tell us about Ari de Roos and the Living Company.
Right. So interesting. So thank you for that. So Ari de Roos, I can't say his name like you. I apologize. I'll point to you.
It's Dutch. It's Dutch.
Right. So Ari
de Roos.
Right. I read a book of his called The Living Company. And you know, it's about creating a learning organization. And he wrote this. He was with the Dutch Shell Oil, you know, Royal Dutch Shell Oil Company like decades ago. And he did planning for them and scenario planning and all kinds of things. And in that book, he talked about a story that, again, this relates to our rectangle idea or to the idea of what is it that we're following blindly in our structures, on what we focus on and who we deal with, that really like it might not be appropriate to like there could easily be other things. It just so happens we've structured things that way unknowingly through no fault of our own. So in the De Hoyst story, he talks about now, I don't know if this story is apocryphal, but it's talked about like it's real. So in the early 20th century, there were, I don't know if any stories, to me, every story is apocryphal. I never know if anything is real or not. So in the early 20th century, there was a team of British anthropologists, and they went somewhere in the world, I forget it was, but it was so isolated, it was a mountain region, it was so isolated that they happened upon a tribe that the tribe was so much different from the rest of the world that this is like 1905 or so, they hadn't discovered the wheel yet. That's where that tribe was. And so they talked to the chief and they said to the chief, they said, what we'd like to do, you know, they learned about the culture there. I don't want to make it seem like they just swooped in and grabbed the chief and went away with him. But they learned about the culture there and they said, Chief, there's a city about a day's journey away from here. And what we want to do, it's a major city. We want to take you there and we want to show you the city and we'll bring you back, but you'll go on this adventure. And he said, sure. So I think that was a verbatim quote.
Sure.
Right, exactly. So they brought the chief there, and I think it was like in Singapore or someplace like that. And they showed him tall buildings, or at least tall for back then. They showed him steam locomotives. They showed him electric lights. They showed him like all this cool modern stuff that he like never had seen before. And afterwards, he seemed very impressed with everything. Afterwards, they brought him back to his mountain region, to his tribe. And they said, of all the things you saw, what impressed you the most? What stayed with you? And he said, oh, I can tell you that. He said, I saw one man who was carrying more bananas than anyone in my tribe could carry. And of course, they were shocked to hear this because they had showed them these miracles, so-called, of modern culture, of electricity and so forth. And it was about the bananas. And the thing was that the guy who was talking about with the bananas was wheeling a huge amount of bananas in a wheelbarrow. And of course, wheelbarrow, right, based on a circle, based on a wheel, and they didn't have wheels. So it was fascinating to him. But the idea of that story is here he was presented with all these unusual things. You can say that they're for the benefit of the world, or you could argue against that his society's better. They were different. They were radically different. That you can't argue with. The thing, though, that most impressed him, that stayed with him, was this thing that he could most relate to, that people in his tribe carried bananas. And he was stunned that someone could carry so many bananas. So he took all this newness and reduced it down to this one small thing, right? This idea of banana. And so the idea here, I had read in someone's blog post, a guy named Johnson, he talked about this story. And he said, sometimes we're not ready to see things. And that if you want to make major change in your organization or in society or wherever, that you sometimes need to prepare people to see what it is that they can't see right now. Right?
Yeah, right. Totally. And so having a vision is really important, but how do you get a vision if you're trapped inside yourself? If everywhere you look, there's just bananas, how do you prepare yourself to see windows and, radiators and electricity and locomotives and all of those things? How do you shake your own world? Well, I want to share an idea that from my own experience. When I was at the World Bank, I was involved in an initiative called knowledge management, which was really about how do we leverage what we know for the mission of the organization. And when I was doing this was a new idea, even though Peter Drucker talked about this in the 1960s. Peter Drucker, who's incredibly influential in the nonprofit world, was talking about knowledge workers. When we introduced it to the World Bank in the late 1990s, didn't make sense. They said, we're the World Bank. We loan money. That's what we do, right? What is this knowledge stuff? So we had to help people to get out of their heads and look at the world in a different way. And the most powerful way that we found to do that was to do site visits to other companies that were really different than ours. Like the World Bank is about alleviating poverty. We were a $20 billion a year organization, and we did things like, put roads or hospitals in, or help with the development of infrastructure, things to lift people up and out of poverty and be part of the global economy. That was our focus. We were not a corporation. Well, another organization that was doing really well in the world of knowledge management was IBM. So we started doing site visits back and forth to IBM. We found Peter Senge up in Boston, who was doing this incredible stuff around leadership and learning organizations. And we went and met with him. We got out of our building and we went into someone else's space. And you know what it's like when you go have like a dinner at someone else's house for the first time? Like you might have a friend and you got all this rapport and this connection, and then you go over to their house and you get a sense of who they are, kind of their context. You see the paintings they have on their walls, what kind of furniture they've chosen, where they live, and it fills out the kind of the dimensionality of how this human being came to be different than you are, what it is that makes them who they are. Like your Steve Cohen poster, right? I don't have one of those. I just have galaxies and stars.
How do we know? Maybe if we took your green screen down, the whole wall would be Steve Cohen posters.
Well, that's true. You don't know. You just don't know.
Exactly.
But back to shaking your own world, having site visits in other organizations that are radically different than your own is one of those ways. And what I hope from this vlog is that we're going to be taking you into worlds that are radically different from your own, but then bringing it back to the association space so that you can think a little bit differently about what it means to lead an association.
Well, related to what you just said about site visits to places that are wholly unlike your own, I had told you that there was this consultant named Johnson who had commented on the Ari de Hoyce bananas story. This is an interesting conversation, right? Rectangles, bananas, Ari de Hoyce. And so he had said, like this idea of you need to prepare people to see things that they may not be prepared to see. And he talked about an example. He said he had a client, and his client was, I don't know how old the guy was, but the guy had inherited a car dealership, like essentially, I guess, a used car lot or something from his dad. And so his dad ran the car lot in a way that you would assume people would, like the old stereotype of like it was hard sell and like all that kind of stuff. And so this younger guy who took it over, the son, wanted to make it customer friendly. He didn't want it to be this hard sell, take it or leave it, type of thing. So the thing is, when he tried to indoctrinate the people who had worked there in the car lot about how to do that, they didn't understand what he meant. Like they didn't get it. Like, this is how you sell cars. I've made a lot of money selling this way. What are you talking about? I don't understand. So what he did was he thought about who around here treats customers the way I want customers treated. And nearby, there was a Ritz-Carlton. And so, right. And Ritz-Carlton, I forget what their tagline is, but, I think something like treating ladies and gentlemen like ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen treating ladies and gentlemen like ladies.
Oh, that's it. Oh, further on. Got it. Right. So, so he found out that they did these customer experience lectures or workshops or so. So he paid to have everyone from his car lot go and attend. And they went to this. I don't know how long it was, half day, 2 days. And they came back and he said it transformed the culture.
Wow.
Because now they understood, oh, that's what you mean. But without having experienced it, how could they possibly know, right? And it reminds me of your site visit thing. How would you know, though? So my question is, you were talking about the World Bank, and I know you were very prominent in this transformational section of the World Bank about storytelling as a means of building culture and innovation and things of that nature. How did you get to the fact that you guys were knowledge workers? And how does someone in association listening, like, how do you know whose site you should visit? That's the question behind my question.
Right. Well, my favorite science fiction quote is, "The future is already here. It's just very unevenly distributed."
Right.
So your goal is to go find where it is today. Where is it happening today? I remember when I was a little kid, I watched Star Trek, the original series, right? Captain Kirk, right? Spock and all those guys. And one of the great things about it was that it actually gave us images of the future that we could move towards. The first interracial kiss, walking around with an iPad, a black woman who was a science officer on the bridge, right? These were things that were not part of American culture yet, but they were seeded. They gave us something actually to see and to respond to and to feel. So where do we go to find that when it comes to associations? Let me just give you a quick example. I'm really interested in the transformation of flagship events. Associations create value by bringing people together, and most associations have large events that include all of their members or almost all of their members. For some of them, it's tens of thousands who gather at a time. And we know that whole world of pulling people together is transforming. Now, we used to have face-to-face events. This vlog is taking place and that we're still in shelter in place in the pandemic, right? Here we are in February 21. And for a year now, we've been forced into Zoom or Teams or whatever, FaceTime, Skype, whatever it is that you're using. And we're back in our rectangles, up here on the screen. But there are completely other ways to bring people together. For example, earlier this week, I was working with the company Utopian and I had my Oculus on, the immersive virtual reality world. And I went into this virtual world. I walked in, I could see my whole body. My face looked like my face. I was talking to other people. I could stand next to them and look around the room. And there was this sense of presence. And I shook the host's hand. He walked up to me and he extended his hand and I put my hand out. And when our hands got in close proximity, this little red grid lit up on our hands. It was like a happened. And I had this experience of connection, which you do not get on Zoom. It was amazing. In fact, they even took me out to this Zen garden at one point because they were showing how in the immersive world, you're not stuck in the auditorium listening to the presentation, just like the real world. you can actually take somebody, walk out in the hallway, but since it's completely plastic, you can walk into essentially a hologram, like the holodeck on Star Trek. And so we went to this Zen garden, and there was a little stream, and there was, a breeze blowing, beautiful trees, Japanese furniture, a place to sit down, and we're having this little private chat while the presentation is still taking place. And then he said to me, we can play with the weather, right? We can play with anything. I mean, you could have a Tyrannosaurus Rex walk in if you wanted to, but what he did was he made it nighttime, and then he made it rain. And that was the weirdest experience because he was dressed in jeans, and I'm talking to him. First of all, you can see the rain's coming down. You can hear the rain, right? Of course, you're not getting wet because it's all happening inside the Oculus. But as I'm talking to him and I'm looking at his jeans, they start to splotch. You know how like when rain comes down and it's light and your clothes start to get a little bit soaked? It's like that's what's happening to him. And it was the oddest experience because it was like multiple senses were telling me it's raining and I could feel my skin kind of tighten up a little bit, And that's that experience. It was almost an emotional experience and response. That's an example of something that very few people are talking about right now when they're talking about recreating their flagship events for 2023, right? I guess we're 2024 for X+3.
Right.
So, when we think of, when I talk to most people about what's possible with a flagship event, they tend to think in two modes, face-to-face and Zoom, because that's what we've experienced. And yet there is extended reality, there's immersive reality, there's augmented reality, there's, artificial intelligence, there's all this other stuff. And so I'm starting to encourage people to think in terms of omnichannel. Omnichannel means that your value is coming to people through whichever channel they choose. It can still come through Zoom and it can still come through face-to-face, but it can also come through immersive, or it could come through your iPhone or your iPad or your phone or anything, a book, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what the medium is because it's omnichannel. It's coming through all of them. Anyways, that's an example of getting out of your head so that you start to shake your world in a way that's relevant to what it is that you're trying to do in the world.
So it sounds like to me, because I had asked you, I said, how do you know what site to visit to give you new ideas? Because the World Bank was a bank, and you said, no, we're a knowledge company. And so how would you know that? And how would you get new ideas around that? And so it sounds to me like some of the site visit stuff is really just about. It's intentional to find something new, but it's finding just new things. You don't know where they're going to lead you to. So in other words, it's not being as precise and exacting as we need to find X type of new place to visit. It's more just about going out and having new experiences and novel experiences, or is what I'm hearing. It reminds me, one of my clients, a big major thought leader, best-selling author person. And so a few years ago, he said he had already written multiple bestsellers, business bestsellers. And he said to me, Mark, I want to write a new book that's unlike any book that I've written about a subject that, I want to go someplace new. And so in talking to him, we talked for a while, and I said, okay, I don't think we're going to think our way into something new because we have very limited capacity. Like you, my client, you're brilliant, I get it, but nevertheless, the world is bigger and smarter than we are. So I don't think that we're going to think our way into something that new. Let's put ourselves in the condition where something new we might stumble upon. So I knew that this guy was, I once asked him, I said, what's the thing that you're most afraid of? And he said, being seen as irrelevant. He didn't even have to think about it, by the way. The answer, it was shocking how I just said, what's your biggest fear? Oh, being seen as irrelevant. It was like, okay, he's thought about this a lot. So I knew that he was into new stuff. And I said, have you ever been to Comic-Con? Right, the comic book convention. And he said, no, but I always wanted to go. And I said, I figured as much. And there happened to be one, coincidentally, in 2 weeks near his house. And I said to him, so here's what I want you to do. Remember, this is one of the top thinkers in marketing. I don't know that I said that in the world. I said to him, I want you to go to Comic-Con. I want you to interview 10 people. They can be stars. It can be Harrison Ford, or it could just be someone cosplay people walking around, like doing cosplay, dressed up in costumes, like from their favorite movies or so. Like, it doesn't matter. They can be people manning the booth, whoever you want. I want you to interview them about why they're there and what their life's like. And I want you to come back and tell me minimally 5 things about marketing that you did not know before you got there. This to one of the top marketing. So in other words, in your field, I want you to find 5 things you don't know. I don't know what they are, if they're big or small, but come back and talk to me about it. And so he did just that. And he came back the next week from going to the conference, and he told me about the interviews and what he found. And from that conversation is where we came up with the idea for his bestseller, which became his latest bestseller, which became a Wall Street Journal bestseller and so forth. It was this idea of just forcing oneself to be in a new place and kind of drinking in what's new there. It's like overtly going for novelty and the new, overtly, like going in for the new as like like an essential ingredient of being there, like it's part of the instruction manual. Yeah. I want you to seek out newness. I want you to seek out newness within the situation. And I want you to report back to me about things that you thought you knew about the world, but you actually didn't. That's essentially what the exercise does, which anyone in association could do. It's like you don't have to think through everything big. You can actually go out and experience something big and then bring it back.
And I hope that you, the listener, will become back to experience something big from us, from the planet of the associations. We'll see you in our next episode.
Thank you.